pledge allegiance to the flag. And Mr. Parsons will lead us, maybe again, I'm not sure.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, first item, approval of our February 18th meeting.
Move to approve the minutes.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain? 6-0-1. Next item, are there any comments from those attending the meeting? Anyone have something to say? So we'll close that then. Under old business, we had work release on the county match. Is there any, you want to have some discussion on that?
Can you refresh our memory, Ann, about the amount of money or?
Yeah, she's got the problem is that over the last couple of years, she's been using ARPA money as well. So there's been millions that she's been using. And so we've just been grabbing whatever we could from food and beverage one year, from ARPA the next, and we just plug in, I think we took from general last December. And her budget is just really big and she doesn't have enough cash to cover it. So over the last 3 or 4 years, Tammy was just, grabbing it from wherever, and Paula kind of wants a set fund and to budget it. So her operating expenses and payroll are the most costly thing she has. Her operating expenses could come out of the jail fund that we have now where they're paying for their meals, but it's up to you guys. I mean, I don't really care. I think Paula just would rather it be set instead of trying to plug a hole every year.
She came for additional appropriations the past few years, you might remember. So, so we had done them from general, we had done them from, but they were through the additional appropriation process would be. But, I mean, it's just an expense that is not a moneymaker. I mean,
Yeah, I think payroll is it's huge. And I think that's, even just covering a little bit of payroll would help alleviate some of it.
and her grant has never been big enough to cover her budget.
Yeah.
Has never been.
No, and she asked for a little extra, I heard it at the commissioners meeting maybe.
Yeah, she tried.
Yeah, she
Asking
asked for a little bit more
for next year.
for next year, but she normally gets turned down. I don't know if they just have a pot of money they pull from for,
I think that's
The
it. That's it.
commu-
There's only so much money appropriated, and when it's gone, it's gone.
yeah. So she's never received an increase in her grant. So, and then with COVID and the population being down during the pandemic, her project income was down, and I mean, it just snowballs until the ARPA committee did give her $1 million, not her work release $1 million, and they've basically gone through that with just paying their employees and.
Well, being part of the community corrections, there's certain things that they are mandated they have to do. But I think I'd love to see us study on all these other people they put on and what they're doing, and if some of those are needed. She's got a lot of people that are doing a lot of different things. I don't know if it's really something we should be getting into.
So is there money in the 20% of our
Operating expense?
operating expense from the lit tax or public safety lit tax? Is there Are we using all that every year?
Almost, but there would be just enough to cover operating expenses. It would not cover payroll. If we're gonna keep where we're at.
Where do we pay the sheriff's department out of? General? I say we put it in general for now then. I mean,
And what amount?
yeah, whatever, I mean, I guess whatever amount that we've used, I guess average over the past couple of years of what we put into it and budget that into general. What do you think, Greg? I mean, it
It
has to come from
probably-
somewhere.
Yeah, it probably is doable, but obviously I have not started the sustainability yet.
But I think that makes the most sense for now because that's the most, what do I want to say?
It's the most logical, really.
Well, not logical, but it's the most restricted fund we have, and if we can use it for that, then let's use it for that, is my thought.
Is that a motion?
Yes,
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second.
and then when you do run that, if it starts affecting it down, I mean, it's going to, but by how much we don't know.
Probably like about a 3-year look back, I would say would be.
I would guess it'd be 500,000
Short.
in the range, yeah. And they're still not getting everything they want. I mean, it's just
So
the
I'm not-
times.
I was gonna say, isn't it sort of like she's juggling for a while?
Yeah,
until
right,
she
she
figures out
juggles
because the
and-
grants don't come in and,
Yeah, until after, grants don't come in until after the budget's done, so that's always
yeah.
it's a tough situation for everyone.
Is that motion, would that be for the 500,000?
For whatever the amount is, yeah, I mean,
An average.
because we'll do it during budget time this year, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For next year.
yeah, that's what we need it for. Yeah.
I will second that, or did somebody second it?
Larry
Larry
got a
seconded it.
second.
Do
Oh, we
we,
would.
does she need more this year?
She will. We don't know yet, so we're gonna wait till the end of the year.
Okay, so we don't have to do an additional next week, okay.
Further discussion? We have a motion. Those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 7-0. Under new business, we have Greg Garitas, an update on Ronald Reagan. And then we also have him for a financial update. So-
Yeah, and I'll kind of, if you don't mind, I'll kind of put them together
Okay.
and follow this list that I put together. You know, we ended 2024 very healthy. Obviously, interest income is a big, big factor, and I brought that up kind of in our CIP meeting, you know, because eventually it could go back down. And so, you know, that will be important as we go forward. We just received an announcement from Fitch. They're not going to, they're going to maintain our AAA rating. That came out yesterday, I think, or today. I checked my email, and so that's real good news. So we've got a AAA and a AA plus. So that's very, very strong as we go forward. And they like where we're at and our ending fund balances that we have. And I'm assuming you all have looked at the 12/31/2024 ending fund balances. You keep in mind, and from the rating standpoint, we should always review the fund balances each council meeting. And, you know, for the prior month, and they should be aware of kind of the revenues and the expenses if you see anything kind of changing dramatically. That's one of the things that the rating agency wants to hear, and they want copies of what's given to the county council on specifically tracking cash balances, revenues, and appropriation. And this report is a really good report that I'm sure you should give them each and every month, okay? And so that's one that we can say then, because it has the date span, of the month, really revenue and expenses, and then year-to-date receipts and expenses. And so that's one that I didn't give you in your package, but you should give, and the council that each month, okay? And then if you got any questions, ask Ann. That's the proper thing to do, and that's what they want to see, is that you're aware of that. So that's that. So as you know, the committee, the improvement committee, capital improvement committee met, and you'll take one and pass it around. This is, and I'll have a couple, this is kind of a result of the hour or 2 hour meeting that we had, and shows some of the projects that we are working on and will be working on. And so wanted to bring council up to date on that. And number one was the Ronald Reagan Parkway. Now, so at this point in time, John, subject to check, I think I heard from you that you would be ready to bid in about 4 to 6 months.
Correct.
And so thanks, Denny, and yeah, and Rhonda may want one too. Thank you. And so Adam Steerwall had put together a timeline for the CIP group, and I passed that out, but really it had us starting to prove documents like next week. Okay, and that was a little fast, so I said, this will be a lease, because what we'll do is do it similar to school building corporations, so it doesn't fall under our 2%. And because we're anticipating using edit as the payment source, that's how we would proceed. And remember, when you use income taxes, they kind of fold that in as part of your overall debt, and kind of falling under the property tax rules. So I also put together, if you'll take one of those and pass it around, Eric had asked, what's the impact on the edit fund? And at this point in time, I put together at least round one of the edit fund, and once that comes around, then I can kind of step through it. Obviously, it depends on what we put together for 26, 27, and 28 in the edit fund. Over and above, I put about a $4.5 million bond payment. That would be roughly a $50 million bond at 4 to 5% interest rate. Okay, and that was the latest estimate, John, I think that we were kind of dealing with from you, 50 million?
Yeah.
Maybe even less.
46.1 is what I come up with, and I think we talked about that.
So on this, you'll see the summary page where it comes up, and we ended the year with 17.9 million. At this point in time, we have not said, how much cash we might put towards it before we would do the bond issue or anything like that. But we have anticipated that we would have a fully funded debt service reserve fund from the edit project fund, so that we would basically have that. So as you can see then, on the second page, you have the revenues, the miscellaneous revenues. Now, Nancy kind of mentioned if Danville was doing a fire territory, and some of that may start impacting some of our edit revenue, our different income taxes, if that gets approved and that goes forward in 2026, not 25, but 26. And so that's important to kind of keep in mind, because it could bring it down a little bit. If you notice the 2025 budget, that's because, and I had to remind myself, we bumped up edit 5 basis points. And if you recall, we were then again going to look at it this year and see if we migrate it back, if we change it, if we do whatever. But that's why we went ahead and kept it up at the 8.9, and this is the latest sheet. If you'll take one of these, I'm gonna swamp you with paper here. but this is the latest and greatest information on the supplemental lit that I passed out. And I think you may have already gotten this piece of paper, but the supplemental lit from the state. Now, it is subject to change, okay? But right now, they're saying that the county as a whole will probably get a distribution of approximately 17.5 million. Now, how does that compare to 2024? It was 22.8 million. So supplemental lit will drop, okay? If you recall, this is the first barometer reading I always take on where we are likely to go with our overall income taxes. And so, you know, it is going down. Now, remember, you won't get all the 17. The 17 is shared with everybody. Okay.
We keep about 40% of it. Is that a lot high?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah, slightly less.
Mhm. And so, and again, subject to change, okay? And remember, the 40% would be distributed among the different, you know, the edit bucket would go in the edit bucket, the, you know, certified shares would go in the certified share bucket. So each and every bucket would go up. So this is good news that it hasn't completely, you know, been eliminated. It's bad news, it's a little bit trending down. And this was one of the higher trend downs that I've seen. So, you know, we're going to have to kind of keep an eye on it as we go forward.
That's about 20% down.
Pardon me?
That'd be about 20%.
Yeah, yeah. Now, maybe the states, maybe people are getting better on their income tax returns and not, remember, this is an 18-month behind the scenes process. And so states catching up, people are back to filing their income taxes on time after that thing that happened about 4 or 5 years ago, whatever that was called. I kind of like to avoid it. And so, you know, maybe part of that's in there. We don't really know. So back to the edit fund then, this handout, we went ahead and kept the higher number at this point in time. And as you can see, there are expenses that I'm now back to the expense page. There are expenses that you're taking out on an annual basis. And obviously, John has been using very strong, right down there, 33222, you know, 6 million in 2025's budgeted for Ronald Reagan, and you're spending that not on the segment we're going to be bonding, or are you, John?
As of right, we spent the edit for our development costs, for PE and for right-of-way, soft costs, and then 20% of construction. So we're done spending the soft costs on this next section, the engineering's done, right-of-way's done, all that other stuff is done. So we would not need to have it, other than if we need to, depending on the funding sources, pay our local share, which is how we've done it typically on our 80-20 or 90-10.
And then we left the resurfacing in there for 2026 at $1.5 million, which is totally separate. But we did not continue that for no particular reason other than $1.5 million out of that is awful strong. Okay, so subject to your budget and things like that. We did leave the sheriff retirement fund in there, and you know, at $1.6 million and grew to $1.7 million. Hopefully, it won't grow to $1.7 million given what we bought down.
Right, and it's actually projected high because we use this warrant serving fees we get back
To net against.
it. So that would be a maximum before the change probably.
Yeah. So, Eric, kind of answering your question, I think, yes, it would probably require about 50% of the edit on a going forward basis, depending on what cash we put in, when and where and how. And, you know, funding a fully funded debt service would be important. So I think it's doable and it wouldn't really crush us.
And we're making it so the TIF pays it back as it can, right?
We would still, once we enter the debt, we will have a reimbursement obligation, just like we did with the other TIF project we did, where if SDI, if we put money in and pay the bond payment, then we would get reimbursed from the TIF. That'll be through the county reimbursement agreement as we go forward. And then it will also lock up the TIF, as we talked in the CIP meeting.
Is that our TIF?
That is our TIF that we put together many, many moons ago to be able to do this.
With Brownsburg annexes?
If we have a debt outstanding, it will not impact our TIF anymore. Okay? Currently, it does. They get it all.
Jenny wants to say something.
Yes, Danny?
Piggybacking on what Nancy just said and ask about, we need to make sure that we have debt on there so that Brownsburg cannot go in and annex that and then we have nothing. So we need to, I don't know how to say it, rebond that or whatever.
Well, we just need to have a bond
Yes.
in order to be able to take advantage of the TIF that comes now and in the future. Okay, so, and remember, that's how I kind of reminded everybody in the CIP meeting, that's how we built the first mile in Avon. And it wasn't in Avon, but it was literally there by the Sears store and what is now Best Buys and all that office. That's how that first mile got built. You might have been even on the Avon Town Council at that point in time, were you? That was a long time ago. But that's how we got the first mile built, and we repaid the county for that first mile, and kind of the concept that we've been trying to do, in other.
So we can do a bond against the TIF in the thing, but pay it with income tax?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, basically, Eric, what I told you is that we would like to have it, first of all, it would be TIF, it would be edit, and then it would have a property tax backup for marketing purposes only. We show you here, you have 2 times coverage. We would never use the property tax backup. And, you could also include any other miscellaneous revenues, like if you wanted to, in the document, that might be if food and beverage at some point in time, if you wanted to use that, rather than edit or whatever. We can make it pretty flexible as we go forward. So where we're at is, given the CIP and given the projections that we put together, and given the timeline of putting together the redevelopment authority lease, remember, it's a little more complicated when you're doing roads. We'll take, we're gonna steal the rest of Ronald Reagan that's not being built and call that the leased premises, so that we can pay interim lease rental. Remember, it's like the jail. You couldn't pay the payment until you got in the jail, so we used the old jail, okay? And we paid a smaller amount on the old jail so that we could service the debt. This is the same exact scenario, okay? So we would have interim lease rental payments based upon ownership of the other Ronald Reagan Parkway area. And then we would release that as leased premises and have the new road be the leased premises once we open it. Okay? That's technically how you have to do it. And so in order to move this ahead, what we've asked is if the commissioners could, when they see fit, take a vote, make sure we want to move ahead from the commissioner standpoint, and then we'll be looking for council to kind of give us the go-ahead as a whole. Then we'll go back to Adam and put together more of a realistic schedule based upon when John will be bidding it and kind of work that together, okay? So that's what I'm not asking for a vote today, but, you know, whenever you can, the sooner the better.
And we'll put that on our agenda at our next meeting.
Okay. So we could then take our action in April. Okay.
Okay, so then, Eric, any questions on the projections of is this what you were kind of hoping to see? Okay. So then what we have is on the CIP then, kind of going back to that, any questions, since we've got Denny here, we've got the roundabouts. Now, remember, that's about $12 million. What we anticipated there was borrowing that money from food and beverage and with the county reimbursement for the 3 that we're going to do, and then have the TIFs pay back the TIFs that are now in place. We're not creating new TIFs. Okay, somebody asked me, well, is this going to harm the schools after that last meeting? And I said, these TIFs are already in place. Okay, we're going to use the pre-existing TIF. I guess I should back up. The one that Strategic Capital owns, that area south of 70, over by, what's the road, Newcastle Road? Greencastle, one of those castles.
You're in the wrong county.
That road that's called Castle that I like to take fairly fast.
Greg, you gotta get out of the roundabout at some point in time.
Yeah, that area is in a TIF. It's not been released yet, but Strategic Capital was wanting to have that as their own TIF. It's actually in the GDI TIF. And so we'll be in the process of moving that out. But that is also supposed to, what I labeled from the top is roundabout number 1. John can tell you where it is, but it's up by.
Innovation Boulevard at Sunbeam.
Number 2 is 1,000.
1,000 right there, just north of where the intersection is now for the truck stop.
And number 3. Yeah. And we won't worry about number 4. He's getting it free of charge.
NDOT's fine.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Greg and John, will we do all 3 of these this year, you think?
I don't know if it'd be this year, because they're gonna have to be staged.
Yeah.
You can't do 2 north ones at the same time.
Yeah.
And we're gonna ask the developers to give money into it as well.
And we're also still hopeful that the state will put in some money also, since they are on 39. So we're still hopeful that we can get some contribution from the state.
And we got to work through the redevelopment commission, put the pieces together.
You'll know that piece in about another 30 days.
Okay, because the redevelopment commission will have the reimbursement obligation to the county, and they will also then be assessing the different TIF areas and hopefully, getting the contributions from the developers and things like that. So it's a pretty complicated process over the next 6 to 9 months. When do you think your first one would be ready to bid, John?
Fall, maybe.
Okay.
They're relatively simple. There's little pieces of right-of-way to get on the 2 northern ones from the same property owner, so it might be a little tricky, but.
So if I may, 1, 2, and 3, which one would you start first?
2.
2, okay. Okay, so 2 being
Because up at
1,000.
the northern one there at Innovation, we've got a signal that's working okay now. The one at the truck stop and 1,000 just north of 70 is really a mess. That needs to be the first one.
So moving on, then I put 3, 4, 5, the Parks Department, the Fairgrounds expansion. Remember, the Fairgrounds expansion, we talked about this in the CIP meeting, that we would be looking at either paying off the current Fairgrounds bond, maybe a year early, maybe not. It's coming due in 28, I believe. And so 27, we would roll the new debt in right behind that, keep that same levy, have no impact to the taxpayer. And so that's one of those that we'll need to kind of start working on in order to make sure the timelines match up. But like I tell everybody, okay, and I told the CIP, and it's right here, we need the boys and girls to get out of the downtown Indianapolis at 11:59 The day they leave, we'll probably have the final votes, and 12:01 will get the final bill, and probably a month later, you'll figure out what's all in there. And so, that's going to impact us, because right now there was proposed legislation, if you did a property tax bond, you were locked out for the next 4 years, where none of these are at this point. But that's something to kind of keep in mind. The fairgrounds would be considered property tax, obviously. And so we've got these lined up, and then the judicial space reallocation, we kind of put those together, but it's really judicial center, right? So, and we put that number there. So, any questions on this?
What's the nature of the fairgrounds expansion?
That is to expand two things. Build a building that I think we can probably move ahead with on our own without doing anything further, but build a building that would house all of the voter equipment, so on, all of that. But then the fairground, the board over there has a strategic plan to literally expand the center there, almost double it in size, so that you can even house bigger programs there and handle more people coming in and out and so forth. That is the plan that they have in mind. That's why the number looks like it does. Yeah.
So a demand for bigger has shown up, and we can't provide that then.
Right.
Let me add to that a little bit.
Yeah,
So,
you're on the board.
yeah, so we went through a strategic plan, Larry. We went through a strategic plan last year, hired a firm out of Minneapolis that came in and did a study, looked at all the events that they did, looked at economic impacts and such. It's quite in-depth. I'm gonna say it's a 50-page plan. We looked at that a couple months ago after the final. That sort of gave us the direction of looking at another building, a building that would actually be larger than what the Hendricks Power building is out there right now, potentially, because there's more demand. They're getting a lot more revenue stuff coming from Indianapolis. The state fair is sort of losing some projects. They've got a great big thing coming this summer that's going to be a very big event out at the fairgrounds, so the demand is there. To Denny's point, there's also another building that's not part of this that's Jack's working on, because we're trying to get the East Campus building taken care of. And we got all the voting machines there, so those voting machines are gonna go out to the fairgrounds potentially, into another building that's sort of next to the maintenance hub. That's gonna be sort of a joint venture between the fairgrounds and the county, and I think Jack will be coming to us asking for some money. Won't be a lot of money for a new building out there that will be either built before or after the fair. So then we can slowly get things moved out of that East Campus building.
I'm just sort of wondering if, I know the facility is really used quite a lot. I'm just wondering if there is, maybe not part of this plan, but maybe it would be, hotel
Facilities help for a hotel?
facilities. Yeah, because.
There's some discussions that are happening.
Okay.
There are.
I think it depends on the Walmart area.
Yeah, or a couple key players.
Okay, so any questions on the CIP at this point? If not, then I'll go back to the list here, and I know Denny's working on this, but we're number 5, the self-insurance reserve fund. We are, pardon me?
Yes, we are.
Okay, do we know how much might be required?
I'm not aware of that.
For the property insurance?
So this is happening across the state.
We're having our first meeting today on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is happening across the state of Indiana. Matter of fact, in Hancock County, we're gonna fund a insurance property and liability reserve fund, self-insured, part of it to up to around $500,000. I was just in Shelby County and they said, no, we're fine, we won't have that. They called their insurance company when I was there and they said, oh, we weren't gonna we didn't send you a renewal because we canceled you. And so there's a big deal going on behind the scenes right now that, and one was Liberty Mutual, one was Travelers. They basically aren't taking the risk on the jails and the police officers and things like that. So there's some people that are running into a brick wall. Okay, and so the question's gonna be, if we have our self-insurance group health, we may have a second one. We may have to have a self-insurance property and liability fund, and I don't, in Hancock County, we're talking, it may be as much as 3 million there that we're gonna need. And so we're gonna start it with 500,000 now. In Shelby County, we're gonna start with a couple $100,000, and we're gonna start setting those up. That's the first, most people don't have them. So I don't think there's actually been a fund in the state of Indiana set up like that. It's going to be interesting where this goes with property and casualty for counties, and then it's probably gonna hit cities next, because city police officers and things like that, we just don't, it was really a surprise, like I said, the one county that called and she said, no, we just didn't get the cancellation letter in the mail yet.
Our insurance guy's in the back, Greg.
Good, so hopefully he's not.
Yeah,
And I'm gonna
that's committees together, and the goal is to have a recommendation for the commissioners and you folks by the end of the year, so we can start next year self-insured.
I'm going to assume a lot of this with P&C stuff, with the California fires, the hurricanes, the reinsurance companies are just magged out.
Well, there's your insurance guy. I'm sure he'll have the great story for you, but that's pretty. And there's been some lawsuits on jails and things like that. I mean, there's been an inmate died in one, and various things like that. So yeah, it's getting tough out there.
Is there any
So
utility in considering the possibility of multiple counties joining in with a fund, kind of like a...
Well, actually, what I'd like to see, Larry, is maybe almost like the teacher's retirement fund. Maybe it may have to go to a state level, to do it. So no, there's not, because everybody right now is being surprised about it, because most of their renewals are not coming up until August or September. And so their new renewals are a little later, and since...
After budget time.
Yeah. And so as soon as I found out about it, and it's kind of like, I started checking with all of our accounting clients, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, they didn't really know and really didn't look at it. And my point is, if we have to start a self-insurance reserve fund, when you think you have a lot of money, you may not. Thank gosh, we've been building to this, and when some people say, how much is too much? I keep saying that perfect storm's going to come one of these days, and they might be coming. It might be on the horizon now.
Maybe now.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, but it's just kind of on the side, but when I was in my prior life down the road on the east side working there, Hendricks County Hospital went with a bunch of other county hospitals in the state, and we formed an insurance company and headquartered it in the Cayman Islands. And we self-insured through that for medical malpractice and everything other things as well. And so that's a thing to do.
Yeah,
Cayman
thank you
Islands,
for sharing that.
Bermuda, that's where all those.
So are you dropping that cash? I had to ask. So health insurance cost, obviously, that's one that we are seeing quite a bit. We actually have created a little survey, and we actually gave it to Erin and asked her to fill it out, and we're kind of comparing it to some of the other counties. We will be, and just, it might be for your information only. I don't know, Nancy, have you really done that in the past? had your health
Compared to
insurance, yeah,
We work diligently with our benefits committee.
I thought you had.
Achieving the lowest cost possible. I think we've done a decent job with that.
Yeah, now they're going up
But
again.
it's still high. It's still ridiculous.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the legislature's sort of working on that too, for their not-for-profit status, trying to,
Oh, okay, well, I hadn't
Yeah.
heard that one,
yeah,
so.
they're trying to beef up. You're gonna lose that if you.
So
are
again,
are within a-
1159 is going to be critical. The last sheet I've got to point out, this is our 2025 certified distribution sheet for income taxes. And the last item here is, we're not ready to talk about any rate reallocation yet. But I know each and every year we said we would look at this. This is the income taxes as a total. And
I'm sorry, these are all page whatever. They're not the front page.
it's just
You just
the,
want to see the top lines?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, yes. Yeah, I didn't give you all
Okay.
3 pages, all those other entities and things like that. The top line is kind of the critical because the expenditure rate, what I'm getting calls from all my council and all my commissioners, and they're saying, why'd the state call us and ask us if we have room in our lit? And I said, because they're setting you up for, if you have room in your lit, then we come and cap property taxes, then we'll just allow you to go to your expenditure rate and make up what you lose. Okay, and the ones at the top are the expenditure rate, and we're quite a bit under of the 2.5% cap, and I had that in the other document. But the point is, they may even move that up because there are people that are really, really close to that. And so these are, if you look at the top, that's the ones that are expenditure. And if you look down at the bottom, this is the property tax relief and the jail lit are the ones that are kind of outside. So this just shows Hendricks County. I wanted to show the line and show where we're at and in total dollars. And then as we go forward, the question's going to be, are we going to take it down? We're going to keep it up for Ronald Reagan Parkway? Or how's PSAP? And Eric, I think you were kind of on the PSAP committee.
Yeah.
Have you gotten updated numbers? And they look pretty strong.
Yeah, there's no I didn't go the last, well, yeah, I was on the phone. But the only thing that they had projected to spend that was outside of their normal budget was buying a vehicle this year. Over the next 5 years, there really isn't anything that's gonna, other than just normal stuff going up.
Yeah, and my understanding is you're going to continue to be involved in that
Yes.
area. And so that'll be critical to our decision on what we do there because, remember, we brought it down and we said we might have to bring it up, but most indications from you were we did not have to.
Not yet.
So, okay.
And there might become a day, everything's becoming more expensive, like I said, health insurance and salaries
Yeah.
and software and all that stuff, so.
Yeah. So Larry said I can't go more than 2 hours, and I've done well. Questions on what I brought up at this point?
Nothing that you brought up, but I had a question. I just found out that, I know that this is going to wheel tax,
Okay.
that towns can pass their own wheel tax.
Yes, sir.
And I found out that Plainfield has one. So people in Plainfield are paying $50 on their plates for whenever they get a plate. So they're paying the 25 for the county and the 25 for the town.
Okay.
That's going on. If they can pass their own, why are we giving them some, is my question.
Yeah, and so that, I thought there's actually a change in this, that's proposed, there's a proposed statute change on the gasoline tax and all that. And it is my understanding, you might know, Rhonda, I thought what it was going to be is the county was ultimately just going to collect on the non-incorporated if the city or the town created one. And that was going to be a change going forward.
Yeah.
So I think that I've got this, Crown Point was the first city in the state of Indiana that implemented it up in Lake County, and Lake County already had it, so they were getting that And I think everybody's now recognized that and said, well, maybe, so our wheel tax could go down if that passes, because it would only be on the unincorporated area. So, yes, Eric, that is something that's being looked at right now. So good question.
There's a bill right now that would make it either or. You know more about than I do probably, but in that overall transportation funding bill, it would make it so that in a town, they would only have to pay the town, but then we don't have to give them a distribution either.
I'm not absolutely sure what happens if you're already doing that. Like
chase that
going
down,
forward,
because I didn't know
January
that.
1.
I, yeah, it was, and like my.
So stay tuned. Now, our wheel tax has been a very, very, I did not assume it on Ronald Reagan Parkway because I was always told I couldn't. But, that could be one of those that could help, or we could use it for their resurfacing.
Well, wheel tax?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we use it for.
And so, and what I'm saying is, if we needed the money in edit for other projects, then we might be able to ebb and tide that. But, so, good question. Any other questions at this point in time?
If I understood correctly at the breakfast yesterday, it's the plan for the state to continue to reduce the state income tax, which I didn't realize. So your projections take into account a declining income tax rate, state income tax rate?
No, sir, because again, I think we've got to really get to 1159.
Okay.
Okay, because there's so much influx. And I heard the same thing. But the other, also, did you also hear, they only have after they pay education and they pay health care, they only have 14% left. And 14% left is going a lot of places and isn't enough. So I think there's statements that are kind of diametrically opposed to each other. And, and given the fact that the revenue projection, now I don't disagree with this, and I think this is what we're already seeing in an LIT. They were saying that it'll be up in 26, but it'll be flatlined in maybe resuscitated in 2027. And I think that may be what we have a little bit of going on, but that's what they said was happening with the state revenue projections. Did you hear that?
Yes.
And so, that's kind of important as we chart our course. I think it was like, when I was in Avon last night with the RDC and everything, I think, I like to use the old drag racing term since I have my pro license. You look at the bullseye, and if you like to shoot guns or whatever, you look at the bullseye and you keep your eye on the bullseye and you don't veer. And at this point in time, that's what I'm saying we've got to do financially, stay right on course, keep an eye on everything, but keep proceeding, okay, and making headways. The sheriff and I talked, if we had to build that jail, I'm looking at $200 million campus, justice campus in Monroe County.
Yeah, more than that.
Yeah, well, we're gonna try, we gotta cap it at that. But if you had to build that jail now, it'd be twice the cost. So keeping your eye on the target and keep going, don't put your head in the sand, keep going, I think is the careful thing we need to do.
I'm not strong in math at all, but it doesn't make sense to me for the state to voluntarily reduce its income and then plead poverty when it comes to paying what it ought to be paying for what the county's paying for the state.
Yeah. Now, that's why I'm thinking the reduction might be something they want to phase in later. And, the last reduction was phased in over 3 or 4 years, I believe, maybe even longer than that, because I dealt with it on each and every year. But I don't think that, at this point in time, I don't think that would derail us in any way, Larry. So.
Any other questions for Jack? for Greg, I mean. Thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you, sir.
Lots of things to talk about on the finance. Lots of angles. Next on the agenda is our sheriff.
Good morning. So I know I sent an email. I hope that you had an opportunity to read it. Just as far as there were two issues that I wanted to address today in relation to the sheriff's pension plan. So the merit board has been going through a process of reviewing the investment managers and trustees for quite some time now. We started last year, and we've got to the point where we are ready to switch trustees, and statutorily we have to have approval through the council for us to do that. So a little background, we've had some concerns and issues since I've come in with the sheriff of being able to receive responses from Comerica. They have been hard to get a hold of. They've been hard to nail down when when someone's asking, where is this $20,000? It takes them months to respond, which is concerning to me. Most concerning was my second item, which was earlier this year. They reached out with an understanding when we were going through an audit of the pension through One America that there was an overpayment made in January of 2024 from a past member that had passed in December of 23. So that $543.53 payment was made to the family. The accounts were closed obviously after his passing. They were able to recover $20 of that, so there's still $523.53 that was not recovered. Comerica did not let us know until 13 months later when One America was looking at the numbers to let us know that that money was never recovered. And so in the audit, we needed to do a bookkeeping adjustment to the pension to show whether we were going to require the family to try to recover that money or just make a bookkeeping adjustment. So the other request is I'm asking that we just do a bookkeeping adjustment. I did speak to the family. Again, it's been, his passing was in December of 2023. The estate has been closed. I don't think it's appropriate for us to try to go after the family for the $523.53. So I'd like us to acknowledge that we're not going to try to recover that payment and we'll just absorb it in the pension. So there'll not be any additional funding needed. It's just a acknowledgement of the overpayment and that we're not going to recoup that amount of funds.
On your first issue, do you need support from the council for you to start or to do that?
Yes, so there are two different forms that you should have there. I believe just the council president needs to sign approval that we will switch from Comerica to Fifth Third. I will say that we interviewed numerous different trustees. Fifth Third really stuck out, and I've had these discussions of the issues that I've had with Comerica over the last couple of years, and they've assured me that they've got protocols in place where those things shouldn't happen, and they've been very responsive. Also, just to note, their fees yearly are less than Comerica, so we're actually reducing the fees. We also, in this process, renegotiated with Gelser, our investment manager, and they have agreed to reduce their fees, which is going to save us pension yearly fees of almost $20,000, a little over $19,000. So we'll actually be paying less for not only the trustee, but for our investment manager through the process that the merit board went.
And what does McCready and Keene do in all this?
I think McCready and Keene is essentially, I don't know, do you know, Chuck?
I don't know what their title is.
They're the actuaries.
Actuary, yeah, that's it.
They're the ones who
They're the ones that
Things to
identify.
tell us what we
the-
have to contribute.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're the.
and they're the ones that identify the mistake, so. we'll do that.
So, does someone have a motion they'd like to
I
make?
make a motion that we give permission to the council president to sign this form to change the trustee.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Cox, a second from Mr. Wiley. Further discussion?
For clarity, I'm gonna have to abstain because this was started while I was still on the mayor board.
All those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
And then I also I make a motion that we have a consensus that we don't go after that $500 figure.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Was it
we
consensus to
don't?
not go after?
Not go after it.
He's gonna save that in fees
Yeah.
within a month.
So we have a motion on the floor with a second to do a bookkeeping correction for $500+. Is there further discussion?
$523.53.
Actually, he'll save it in about a week.
Both documents signed the supplementary trust agreement and the trust agreement.
Yes.
So the motion was just for the trust agreement. Maybe we need to do one for the supplementary as well. We didn't combine those.
I amend my motion to cover both documents.
Okay, second, all in favor?
Yep.
Further discussion? All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes 6-0-1.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next is a public hearing prior to our additionals. I'll open the hearing now. Anyone have anything to say? Doesn't look like it. I close the public hearing. We have 6 items for additionals to the budget. Anyone?
I've got a question about the health, we were paying funds for healthy families out of ARPA. Were those positions here before we started paying them with ARPA? Or are the new positions?
We had, I think maybe one of them is new. We had some part-time position, 2 part-time positions. We had trouble filling part-time, so we combined one to be a full-time family support specialist.
But these were all existing prior to using ARPA. I just want to make sure that we didn't say we're going to use ARPA funds, we can hire people when they run out. That's my only question.
I got one for you, too. Yesterday, I talked to one of the doctors that's on the board, and he wanted to say that he's been on board for a while, and this year, he's the most impressed he's ever been with how everything's running, how well you're doing. So I wanted to tell you that. Also, I have, back a couple of years ago, we used that government money to add about 13 people. And at the time, there was discussion on whether we could sustain that down the road. I asked him, and he really couldn't say either. I'd like to see, especially at budget time, some numbers to justify what these people are doing, because you're asking us to approve salaries for 4 here. And I just don't know if we could sustain all those people. So I'd really like to see some numbers on how many people they're seeing, how much they're helping to justify the expenditure there.
You're referring to the additional with the Health First Indiana
Yeah.
funds? Yes. Yeah, and we are providing numbers to the state every month to talk about how we're spending those funds, so we can certainly gather that information and present that at budget time as well.
Other questions? Anyone care to
Make a motion to approve 1 through 6 and additional appropriations.
We have a motion to approve 1 through 6. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Discussion? All those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No opposed, it passes. Next item is our transfers. We only have one.
Make a motion to approve.
Oh, approve the audit. Oh, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Passes 7-0. Thank you. Let's see, I've got a 2025 annual jail report for us to look at. Is there any questions or any discussion on that? Hearing none. Status of funds, any thoughts or comments? The
I might comment on the February number and the January number. Taylor Swift was one.
Okay, all right.
Food and beverage.
We have several elected officials in the group here. Any comments or anything you want to talk about? Brad? No? Thomas? Okay, moving on, I have asked Rhonda Cook to give us a legislative update. We've been talking an awful lot of legislature here today.
The one bill that you're probably the most interested in is Senate Bill 1, which came across from the Senate and has now been stripped out with the Senate sent to the House. And what started in House Bill 1402 has been proposed as an amendment to replace all the language that came over from the Senate. This is really Representative Thompson's brainchild in this amendment. He's so knowledgeable on this issue to the point that it's hard for committee members, because I talked to one of them, said it's just a lot to grasp because it's very complex, and overhauling the property tax system. So just to go through some of the things that are in the amendment, it hasn't been passed out of committee yet, but it eliminates business personal property tax totally over a period of time. It also eliminates the floor, the threshold 30% floor over time. It phases down the homestead deduction over 5 years and increases the supplemental homestead to 2/3 of the AV for the property. And it provides a deduction for the 2% category, the 2% tax cap category, and eventually puts on a deduction of 1/3 of the AV for those properties. We talked about lit being a 2.5% cap, and this increases the county lit rate, or the ability for you to go up to 2.9% lit, and allows municipalities to adopt their own lit. I believe there's a population parameter there of like 3,500 the municipality has to be over, so they can adopt a 1.2% lit of their own. Then it changes the expenditure rate categories so that you'll now have 4 categories for the lit expenditure rate. And those are up to 1.2% for county general purpose revenue, up to 0.4% for fire protection and emergency medical services, up to 0.2% for non-municipal civil taxing units, general purpose revenue, and up to 1.2% for certain cities and towns that are not eligible to adopt their own lit. It's removing the provision, if you had this in your county, to impose lit on people that don't reside in your county. I think that was down like in Evansville, where if you worked, there was a provision, like if you worked in Evansville, they could impose lit. No more lit distributions to schools and civil taxing units from those counties that were former Cadgett counties. And the lit property tax relief rate expires December 31st, 2026. The trust accounts for lit, they're going to phase those out and then have the budget agency create a lit holding account that will be operated by the budget agency to make monthly transfers. So really a lot with phasing out business personal property, lots of changes with lit, and then new deductions to help lessen the AV. So I'll stop there. Complex enough, right? Just how all of this is gonna play out. I think the testimony from like the counties and cities and towns was that these changes need to be made with like surgical precision because not all tax bases are the same. And, you know, just one broad policy may not work for everybody when we start getting in and finding out the unintended consequences. So that is Senate Bill 1.
So let me pause for that for just a minute, Rhonda.
Yeah.
So Greg, we go out to bond and we look at property tax backup. What kind of factor is that going to be to rating agencies with this kind of stuff that's pending?
Gabe, again,
Tough.
we gotta get the boys and girls out of downtown, okay? Because how many times has this already changed? A couple hundred. How many more will it change? Probably half of that. But gotta get them out of downtown, and we'll give you our opinion. Remember, the property tax was a backup. We were asking grandfather just for support, just in case. We don't ever expect to go to granddad or grandma.
I've got a question about Senate Bill 5 and the part where it says local units must do an RFQ for every single contract.
Yes.
Is that gonna go away, hopefully?
We're working on trying to make that go away. I think the exception is legal contracts, but it requires anyone, political subdivisions included, that, and the state, that, so it's anyone who receives a distribution from the state, which we all do locally with NVH, to be subject to the rule that all contracts have to be competitively procured. So that, you know, right now, services, engineering firms, architect firms, you don't go through a process for those necessarily unless you want to. So now that would all have to fall under one of the procurement processes.
Sounds like a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, that is a part. There was language in another bill that we got that removed, but now it's over here in Senate Bill 5. That is the worst part of Senate.
I'm fine with the state, just take out local units and they can do whatever they want themselves, because it will grind everything to a halt.
I should give you the deadlines too, where we are in session right now. So, you know, bills are in the second house. Committee report deadline is April 10th. So all bills out of committee by then. And then the third reading deadline is April 15th. And then we'll start really heavy into conference committees. After that point, they have to adjourn by April 29th. So we're kind of getting close to the final stretch here. I was just gonna hit on a couple more bills. I can't cover them all because there's a lot, but there's a bill 1198, which allows you to do more with your own workforce for public works projects. It raises the threshold from $250,000 to $375,000. There's also a automatic inflator in that tied to CPI, the Consumer Price Index, so that amount continues to increase.
Are they, as part of that too, are they changing the amount that you can quote versus bid?
I don't think that's in the bill. It's
That's
just
been the same for like 20 years, and you can't do anything for.
There's a provision regarding public notices in 1312. It's kind of important here because you have a newspaper that publishes once a week, and probably Ann and Nancy know how hard it is to get a public notice. And then the timing it takes, mainly not just the expense of the ad, but the delay in your construction project. This would allow a statewide website to be created so that public notices can be posted there for free. You wouldn't have to pay for the ad, but it gives counties the choice. They could put it in the newspaper or on their website. They could use all three if they wanted to. The concern from the newspapers is the loss of revenue, and then the fact they say that not everyone has internet access, so.
Well, if they looked at the actual, how many papers go out, I don't think any of these little papers actually meet the requirements of a true paper.
I'm hoping at the very least that maybe they would be willing to start to go ahead with the state website and also require you to do newspapers for a while. So maybe we could say, hey, this is really working. And then eventually, you know, it depends on budgets and everything. The road funding bill is 1461. It does, we talked about the wheel tax already. It requires a wheel tax adoption for you to apply for community crossings grant money. Community crossings, they're proposing putting $200 million in that fund to be used over 2 years. And it also has your MVH distributions based on your PASA ratings. And then it also authorizes and opens the door for NDOT to pursue with the federal government the authority to institute tolling on certain roads. There is a Senate Bill 95, which deals with law enforcement training. We've kind of dealt with this before, but it also applies to state police. So if one law enforcement agency happens to hire away an officer from another jurisdiction, you have to reimburse for the training costs, even if it's the state. Senate Bill 355 says that all municipal elections have to move to the even numbered years. That's a little controversial with cities. 382 is interesting. It says that if the county would give a school a gift or unencumbered funds, it allows the county executive to set up a local board to oversee those funds. I don't know if you've ever done that before. We do it a lot now more with like TIF, you know, and giving revenues to help schools. So then just two that are more relevant locally here. 1472 is the annexation of residential development, and 1473 pocket annexations. Those are both authored by Greg Steuerwald. 1472 is so that there's a big residential project that I think is over 1,000 acres. You probably read more about it here in Plainfield, so that can be annexed. And 1473 on pocket annexations is so that when a city or town has, like, we call it Swiss cheese, where there's like a circle kind of carved out that's in the middle of a city or town, and it's not part of the city or town. This allows them to go ahead and close that and take it in as the city and town and annex those islands, I guess you would call them.
And I call that the Avon. That's actually one I worked with Avon on, put together, because there's so many pockets. My son actually lived in one of the pockets. And the police department, okay, so, you know, that, they have probably 25 or more little pockets, and it's unbelievable.
I live in a pocket. I live in a pocket.
Do you?
Brownsburg's got me surrounded.
Yeah.
You said that bill allows them to do that, it should require them.
Yeah. Brownsburg
Exactly.
won't annex because they don't want to take on the responsibility for.
Of an older subdivision.
Right.
Avon, I mean, again, we kind of put this together with Avon and town manager, and, you know, it does make sense.
So there is another annexation bill out there. It's a bigger, broader scope, and it's being carried by well, there was one in the House. I should say that. It's Senator Buck's annual annexation bill. So there's a more comprehensive bill out there on annexation, but in the past few years, it hasn't gone anywhere, so I'm not sure what's gonna happen this year with that bill.
Is that it, Rhonda?
Yeah, I've got lots more bills, so if you see one that you're kind of interested in, there's a county coroner's bill that talks about when someone dies lives in one county but then dies in another county, and there's a dispute about who pays for the autopsy. They're trying to work that one out.
And we have that situation right here.
Oh, really? Okay.
right now.
So that's 1194 on that bill, so.
I'm gonna give a lot of thought the next time I ask you for a legislative
I want to hear all
update.
that.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you very much,
Uh-huh.
Rhonda. Mr. Cox, comments?
Larry Heston. I apologize for not calling before the meeting. I was trying to get you home, I forgot. But I still have a little bit of concern, kind of falls back to the openness of a possible liability here with the work release billing. If you're aware, second shift has one supervisor, a sergeant. Third shift has one supervisor, a sergeant. If the second shift guy is on a week's vacation and the third shift guy is on his 2 days off, there's 2 days that building has no supervisors for 2 whole shifts. Now, what they do is they assign an officer, I believe, without any additional pay for being a supervisor, to oversee on those days. But I don't feel that's right. And 2, I don't think that's very conducive to having anything flow correctly. So I would like to see that, and I also understand that the way community corrections is set up, any additional staff issues has to come through the board before it goes to her at the actual program and or the commissioners to oversee adding people. But I think they'll take a real hard look at having designated supervisors 24 hours a day. Not just assign some officer that is working with other officers and who's in charge, type of thing. That doesn't work well in police work. So, just food for thought.
No. If you're asking for a legal opinion, there's this very strong rule of thumb is if you're a lawyer serving on a board, you offer 0 legal advice. So I'll fall back on that. But yeah, I'd agree that there is some concern, but I say that as a board member, as a lawyer.
Just pass it along to them because they have to look at that. I imagine we can look at it at budget time, but then if that process is, it has to come through the board, that's probably where it needs to go.
David, are you really talking about adding personnel, or are you just talking about the promotion of personnel that currently
One or the other,
exist?
whichever they have to do. I talked to her 2 years ago about making a corporal position and promoting one of those officers to corporal, and she wouldn't give it. So, yeah.
Did she give an indication as to what her reluctance was?
But I always receive, I'm looking at it. So, I'm beating the horse again.
I got
So
you.
I just, since that's my background, I just feel that you're putting pressure on an officer to do a supervisor's job.
Oh, I
And
understand.
sooner or later, something's gonna happen. I mean, theoretically, they could have both shifts be on vacation for a week. I don't know if she has any in place that can't happen, but you could theoretically have 7, 9 days of no supervisors assigned on 2 shifts, and that's just not right.
Okay.
Ms. Marsh?
I attended and was sworn in to the Convention and Visitors Bureau and attended their first meeting.
Very good.
They're happy because of Taylor Swift again, and it substantially made a difference.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Sure. Anything else? No. Mr. Wyatt?
For Ann, when we were having discussions with Brownsburg about the parkway and a TIF and all that, they mentioned, it was brought up that they still owe us a couple payments or some money back due on 56th Street. Can you check to see if they've ever paid that?
I can. I thought we had talked about that at the redevelopment commission meeting.
We have, and I don't believe they paid it. And I think we may have to invoice them. That's the subject to check.
Okay.
There was discussion about that when I was still in, and that I didn't hear, but I saw the emails, and I don't believe it's been paid, and I didn't do anything with it, so I didn't know who is responsible for billing them. Maybe John asked me about it later, but I think it did fall through the cracks.
I think the consensus was that it was gonna be discussed at a higher level
Well, here's our discussion. Let us know if we pay it. If not, we'll make a decision next meeting, go after it.
They need to pay that. Anything
So
else,
will
sir?
No,
Greg be able to help with the numbers that's due?
We already have provided that. We provided that in an email, and I think we gave you the number. And so, yeah, that we've been on that trail. So thanks for bringing it up, Eric.
Mr. Hudson?
I know it's seems like a long time away, but June 21st is the state called meeting for county council, state board of accounts called meeting. So you might put that on your calendar. It'll be at the Renaissance Center in Carmel again. And there'll be a
vacation every year.
Thank you.
Yes, I've never been.
Friday evening before, there'll be a social gathering, I guess, food and drinks and so forth. But for those of you who have not attended, I think it's very worthwhile. So might put it on your calendar.
Who's the day of that?
The 21st of June. You'll get notice later, but I thought might as well get you notified as early as possible.
There will be an invite. that you
Yes,
file.
yeah.
Mr. Parsons?
The only thing I have is the first emergency management meeting. I'll be attending, will be next week.
All right. Anything else?
No, sir, thank you.
Ms. Stark?
Our office is all done officially.
Okay.
So more than welcome to come look at it.
All right.
It looks very good.
I'll try and do that if we get out of here. All right, thank you. Well, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Yeah.
This is on the QT.
So those 9:30 meetings.